With the extra point, this is Erik McKinney, joined by Greg Katz. Greg, news from head coach Clay Helton as it pertains to Alabama defensive tackle Ishmael Sopher. Not going to be available, certainly for the beginning of spring, maybe all of spring. Helton said, maybe he comes back at the end. They're hopeful to have him healthy over summer and then obviously going into the season. But compartment syndrome, which is the same thing that backup quarterback Mo Hassan last year suffered at USC, and Michael Pittman also now with the Colts knocked him out for 3-4 weeks. It was kind of the guess, and so clearly that would be a huge bulk of spring ball. He was a guy that was very interesting at that defensive tackle spot, as USC it won't have Jay Tufele or Marlon Tuipulotu, not without, they were without Tufele last year, but Tuipulotu stepped up in a big way. What does that injury and not having him this spring do to that position in your eyes?
Well, it's the good and bad news. I mean, you get a defensive tackle, former highly recruited player that went to Alabama. You got to say, look, at the very worst, he's going to be better than what we have, and he is a huge man. I think the disappointment is that we can't see him right now and watch him play. But if he's going to have something like this, have it now. I don't really think he'll be back for the regular spring practice things based on just listening to Clay Helton and the way he phrased it and his, should we say, his outer personality about it. Disappointing, but the good news is it's going to give others a real chance to show what they can do. It's time for Brandon Peely to step up. We'll see what Tuipulotu can do. He actually looked pretty good there in the games that he played in. It opens up a lot of opportunities, but it still doesn't take away from how good is Sopher. We want to know because you know what? You can't get around it. He was recruited to Alabama. I don't think Alabama recruits bad football players. For whatever reason, it didn't work out for him. But we know in the past, sometimes players just don't fit into certain places once they get there. Doesn't mean that they're have a bad attitude or what have you. You know, I'm going to hold out a positive thing that when he gets ready to play, that he will be excited to play. He will take to Coach Oto's personality and the way it goes. And we're just going to have to be patient, like it or not.
Yeah, you mentioned there being a good fit. I don't really recall Utah fans being all that, devastated when Stevie Tuikolovatu comes over to USC, and I don't know what that season looks like without him there in the middle of that USC defense. So things clicking for different guys in different situations. That's something we've seen all the time, and for sure, Sopher could not get on the field regularly at Alabama. Does a change of scenery kind of alter things for him and kick him into high gear a little bit? That was a question that was right there at the top of the list in terms of things we wanted to find out this spring. The fact that we're not going to, the question now changes to who of those young guys at defensive tackle can step up. You talked about Brandon Peely, who's not a young guy, but the time's now for him to grab that spot. He doesn't have Jay Tufele and Marlon Tuipulotu to battle within there anymore. He's got to raise his game up, be more consistent, I think, and he has the skills to be able to do that. And so I think the spring becomes a little bit about, can he take control of that position without maybe another experienced guy there to push him a little bit more. But then my eyes go to a lot of those young guys. You had Kobe Pepe and Jamar Sakona come in that 2020 class. Saw a little bit of Pepe in there. But there's a chance for them to push a lot. Dejon Benton is another young guy. Seen kind of some flashes from him a little bit, but the big question for me now is Jay Tuaya, who comes in as an early enrollee, a true freshman, another big, huge man already in the middle of that defensive line. Can he use Sopher's absence to kind of jump up there, push some of those guys in the year or two above him, and maybe jump in behind Peely or even start to push him a little bit? Defensive tackle is not a spot where you really expect true freshmen to come in and make a significant impact. But this was a four-star defensive tackle from Southern California. Those guys don't come around all that often. So the coaches are going to want to kind of push him a little bit and see what they can do with him in there. So again, it opens up, like you said, some good news, bad news. I think ultimately you want to have Sopcher out there. You want to know what you have in him, and if you can kind of put pieces around him in the middle. But this is going to, I think it's going to push a lot of guys, a lot of the younger guys, because they can't. You can jump in. You can jump up a couple spots, and trying to replace those two guys in Tufele and Tuipulotu there in the middle of the line. That's a big ask, because if you can do that, you mentioned Tuipulotu. There's Drake Jackson. There's going to be Corey Foreman coming in, and Hunter Eccles, and what we saw from Nick Figueroa and Caleb Tremblay. There's guys on the edge there. Figuring out that middle is going to be big. You don't have a potential answer there this spring, but maybe you find some different ones in the guys left to go in the spring. So again, another position. We've talked a lot about the offensive line. Right there in the middle of that defensive line, that is absolutely going to be a spot to watch, I think, for both of us, and really everybody this spring.
Absolutely.